hide anymore. The truth about Jungkook and Jimin's relationship is revealed. In the world of K-pop that is full of spotlight and pressure, there is nothing more difficult than keeping personal things secret. But when two big names like Jungkook and Jimin, who from the beginning of their careers were known to be so close, slowly looks away, speculation cannot be damned again. Now, after months of fans wondering, the truth of their relationship is slowly beginning to come to light. Sources from the credible military environment finally spoke up. In a report that can no longer be denied, it is stated that Jimin and Jungkook's relationship is not as warm as it used to be. But what's surprising isn't just their distance, it's the emotional reasons that have been so closely covered by both. They had a very deep talk one night at the beginning of training. But after that, there was a silent agreement to keep a distance. Not because they hate each other, but because they are afraid of hurting unfinished feelings. Said one of the internal staff who had handled the logistics of the interaction of the artists at the headquarters. Jikook, a name born from the combination of Jimin and Jungkook, is not just a fan service gimmick. Their interaction over the years is evidenced by the closeness on and behind the stage. They laugh together, support each other, even encourage each other in difficult times. But lately, in every public occasion, the proximity signal seems to fade. Even when they appear in training videos or official military content, they are no longer seen in the same frame. A close relative of Jimin finally confirmed that Jimin went through a heavy emotional phase before entering the military. He once said that there was one person he could no longer talk to like he used to. The name was not immediately mentioned, but many believed it was Jungkook. While from the family Jungkook, a cousin who had accompanied him before the draft, admitted, Cook doesn't say much about Jimin, but he usually says his name. This time, he just said if she's happy, that's enough. But his expression wasn't happy at all. Some army began to match these small pieces. Song lyrics, gestures during training, to the way they mention or don't mention each other's names on the broadcast. And the closer one looks, all the signs form a painful conclusion. They're keeping their distance, but not out of hatred. Precisely because it is too deep. One of the idol culture observers called, in very close relationships, sometimes distance is a form of protection. They know how precious they are to each other, and precisely because of that, they are afraid of destroying everything if they continue to impose closeness. The fans certainly hope that this is not the end. In many of the deepest relationships, silence is not a sign of completion. Perhaps this is just a phase, a time needed to grow up, to understand each other again from a more mature distance. And as Jimin once said in an old interview, if you were important, I would never really leave you. Even if I go far, my heart will stay in the same place. The truth can no longer be hidden, but not to be regretted, but to be accepted, understood, and taken care of, until such time as they can speak again, not as colleagues, not just friends, but as two hearts that have gone through the storm and still choose not to forget each other. After a long period of silence, various sources mentioned that there was a night at the headquarters when the two were in one room without official supervision. It was not a planned meeting. It's just an unavoidable coincidence, and for two people who keep so many things unspoken, coincidence can feel like fate. The source who witnessed the incident from a distance said quietly, they don't talk for long. Maybe even just look at each other for a minute. But their facial expressions were like two people who wanted to hug but didn't know if they were allowed to do so. In a room lit only by dim lights, there were no words, only a silence louder than a scream. Jimin lowered his head, and Jungkook, who had been known as a strong and calm figure, he clenched his jaw, trying to hold back something he couldn't say. That night they left without saying anything, but since that night, a staffer said, the two began to show small changes. Jimin again sang a short song during practice. Jungkook started laughing again in his group. Like a heart that begins to heal without having to force everything back to the way it was. ARMY knows one thing for sure. No matter what happens, the two do not hate each other. There may be injuries. There may be disappointed. But more than that, there is respect, there are memories, and there is a part of each of us that cannot simply be erased. And although the world never knows what they are really talking about or not talking about that night, Fans will continue to believe that a relationship like Jikook's cannot disappear just because of time or distance. As one soldier wrote in a viral open letter, "If you still pray for each other in silence, that will be enough for us." Because prayer is the quietest, but most powerful form of love. A few weeks after that moment of silence, slowly but surely, the atmosphere in the headquarters began to change. Not massively, unobtrusively, but enough for those who are sensitive to feel. Jungkook is seen carrying a small notebook more often, not for practice, but a place where he used to write lyrics or heart content that couldn't be talked about. Jimin, who had previously been more alone, began to socialize again, although still maintaining a certain distance from everyone. The most interesting thing is that on the day of the recent military anniversary, both stood in one and the same row. Not side by side, but no longer far apart. Several cameras captured the rare moment. At first glance, it may not even be an interaction, but it's enough to make a lot of ARMY feel relieved. It was as if the world was repairing its path, one small step after another of great unfinished flavors. One of the military's mental health staff once mentioned in an interview with Korean media. Sometimes trauma or mental wounds are not healed by words, but by being. Just know that the person is still near you. It is already like an invisible hug. And maybe that's what happened with Jimin and Jungkook. They no longer blame each other, no longer forced to be like before, but slowly rebuilding the space they once inhabited together, not as an idol, not as a BTS member, but as a human being. The purest relationships are often invisible to the world. They happen behind the scenes, in the whisper of a bedtime prayer, in the heartbeat that remains racing at the sound of the name of someone who was once a part of life. Jikook's story is not about endings or breakups, but about how two souls learn to heal themselves without hurting each other. This cover is not a conclusion, because their story is not finished yet. The day will go on. The military will be over. The world will again welcome them with cheers. But behind it all, only the two of them know how deep they've gone, and maybe they still feel. Sometimes we don't have to start from scratch. Just sit side by side and say, "I'm still here." That's more than enough. Fragments of notes allegedly written by Jungkook in his training diary, and for Jimin, maybe he doesn't need to say anything, because his smile as it used to be will always be the most honest answer to the heart that knows him. The ARMY awaits, not to see them like they used to, but to know that two hearts that were once so close never really separated.